So yeah, just threw up the same ascending triangle here for Ethereum that Magic was kind of alluding to on Bitcoin as well. So because I have to imagine that most are looking at this also. Interesting to know we've made it back to the area where we came into last month, right? So once again for ETH, this was previous month on news alone, right? Looking at that kind of time frame was CPI data, shot right up at the time. This was our monthly pivot from last month. Came back to it on the Fed meeting date, right? So loading shorts, right? Essentially at this region. It was very interesting to see we didn't take the high over here. Once again, still have not done that quite yet if we're going to do it. But, you got the pullback, and then, yeah, you've been putting in the same structure, right? This ascending triangle. You've got now 3 touches on the high side, potentially, pull back down to the region of 1230, right? So for anybody looking at it in that sense, it poses an interesting, setup here, because if you do get a little break to the upside, I would imagine that everyone's going to be hopping on this, assuming that it's going to go, pretty decent move. However, to throw on a couple of other things on this little idea here is that one thing is to note to the downside here. Right now we're holding our quarterly pivot, right? So that's 1321, shot up, and we're just kind of bouncing in between the two. Losing this region, we do have an untapped weekly pivot for this week. So once again, average of price down low, pretty decent statistical target for the week to come back down to this is about 1260. And then that would be, nearing the bottom trend line if you're going to be looking at this as that ascending triangle. But to throw on a couple of ranges here, right? So just kind of put some confluences along across the board here. We've got, we're going to do this one. So this is, the larger range that I'm looking at the moment. And I'll take these trend lines off. And just want to note that same, or one idea here, right, is that, you come up and you actually take these highs once and for all for the last couple of weeks here. And this would actually be dating back 2 months. What you really be doing is running into a high time frame range high, right? So this is from last quarter, and that does come in about 1260, give or take. Potentially have a little deviation to the upside, and really want to see how things kind of transpire if you hit it. But that is something to be aware of, is that we are just below the overall value area high right now for the last quarter, right? So when you think about things like a potential, ascending triangle that you see a lot of times, you get those people will consider them fake outs. It's times we could see something potentially like this, right, where you actually come back through, get that break, and then you actually come back inside, right, where you just get the deviation of the range, re-enter, and potentially anybody's going to be looking at this as a breakout back test of the trend line, and you really just want to be paying attention at that time if something like that happens, right? Super speculative idea at the moment, but I just want to kind of throw it up there for a little bit of confluence along this pattern that is kind of just like building up in this range, right? So at the moment, looking for that. Once again, weekly pivot down here is the EQ of the range as well. You've obviously got the point of control down here, which is at the moment a local gold pocket. So a natural target to the downside is going to be this point of control either way. And then obviously, if this is where we're turning around, you got the gold pocket that lines up with that region as well. You've got potential for this to have been a bearish bat, right, here on Ethereum as well, right, even though it's just about come up and invalidated that. So if we do push a little higher, then that would take that out. But just once again, another idea of confluence. You can see that the B leg would be, one of our major targets. Once again, back down here by the gold pocket, point of control. Definitely, the weekly pivot, which is decent little move below us, right? So 4 or 5%, definitely a decent little move compared to what we were dealing with for the last few weeks. We're just getting like a 1 or 2% move over the course of a week. So that is an area to be considered with, right? So 1260, 1217, and then from there, right? Unless we, to the upside, it really is the same, areas we've been looking for, similar to Magic. We are actually back to them. So it's a time to be paying attention. Taking longs from this level, these regions can be a little risky and tricky because potentially we do only have a little bit more upside before we get a decent pullback, right? If we're not pulling back now. Downside for me would be starting to lose the quarterly at 1216, potentially a back test, and then we'd be looking down at 1260, and then this point of control, gold pocket. So that's kind of the immediate. If you weren't looking for a short position up in this region, this would be that short idea here. Otherwise, this is support, so you can't really short right into support. You would really want to look for that loss and then the back test potentially. Otherwise, looking to see if we claim this range to the upside, right? And then if we do have some target above us. Just be interesting to see if we actually get them. But, like I said, the whole space is more than likely looking at this ascending triangle. So that playing out is just something to be aware of, right? The amount of times we see those play out, it's possible, but usually that doesn't occur to the tune of everybody winning that move if it happens. So as far as any more pullback idea here, we got like I said, you got the Q4 range right here. Another thing to consider is you throw on the high time frame regression as well for this. And this does, once again, not that this is gospel. You can see we deviate that as well, but just a little confluence above us as well, right at the value area high, or potentially running back into it in this region. But that does come in just above us also. And that has gotten a lot of the price action pretty nicely over the last quarter. We have a structural range here, right? Just from the November dump here. And you can see, I bring this up because if we do actually make our way back down to the weekly pivot below us, 1260, potential to actually, rotate this range again is on the table, right? So because we'd be re-entering this previous range here. You got point of control as the EQ as well. And then you could potentially run it all the way back down value area low, and then some of our lower targets would come back into play. So it's just things to be aware of if we start making our way down. Similar to how MATIC was saying, I don't think this is necessarily the death sentence of the rally, but just be aware of areas that if we start coming back into them, things can change, right? So weekly pivot, for the time being essentially a decent low area. I mean, I guess you would really consider this one at 1236 an area you really don't want to lose as far as making a new lower low, right, in that sense. But coming back and losing the weekly pivot, re-entering this range, I would imagine that we're going to take a stroll back to this point of control region and see how the volume's kind of weak in this region. So maybe root around in there for a bit. If that happens, or like I said, updates will be thrown out, but we'd be making make a lower low in that aspect, and then potentially make a little downtrend on there. So just things to be aware of. Definitely a time to remain pretty neutral. We had a really nice run back to this area. Had some really nice statistical targets along the way. And what was this from? 1180. What's the dates here? That was Christmas. So just from actually New Year's, right? That was, right there. I mean, a 15% rally out of ETH. And then obviously that transpired into a really good bunch of moves in the altcoin market. Morning, everybody. How you doing over here in the chat there? Kero, Nick Sells, Crypto Billy. Billy is everywhere. Billy, you are like you're like the crypto kid. I don't even know. Billy the Kid. Dude is like everyone's hype man. It's awesome. So yeah, just a little confluence in those areas. One for me is just really paying attention to see how we react at 1260 if we make our way down there. In the immediate, 1316 is a big one to just pay attention for. And let's see. Yeah, our previous week is also right. This our previous week range is also in this region also. And we have, just, same thing. It's just, getting back into this, to this weekly pivot, you're just re-entering a bunch of other ranges here. So just something to know, if we do that, you could have a little bit more potential downside. So we really want to see how things react. If we get to 1260, you really want to see that bounce potential there. So that's pretty much all I got on ETH, right? And then, if we make it through this region and get that break and it's legit and you can see an upside get some upside potential here, then I would be looking for that next that golden pocket area, which is like 1400 and change, something of that tune, right? Which is pretty much just this right here. So in that region, interesting to note that actually right above us too. Let's throw back on that range. So you got the value area high and you got 0.5 fib right above us. So getting back to the idea of a potential slight deviation, right? So let's just say we're living in this little triangle here, make our way down to 1260, and which is basically the bottom of this trend line now anyways, and you actually run it back and get a nice little break. This would come up, take the highs, 1377. You'd be living outside of that range as well. But potential for this to just come up, meet this, and then come back into the range is there, right? And that would be looked at and viewed as a failed breakout or what have you. But that would just that's a very decent target to the upside, right above all of our regions. Would come through and take out all of the highs for like the last 2 months, and then potentially has another, even if it's just a return to the range lows, right? So just something to keep in the back of the mind there, right? So. All right. But yeah, otherwise gold pocket to the upside. If I would also imagine that the idea of double bottom cup and handle a what's it called, the goldfish pattern, right, could start be making its way around here. Adam and Eve double bottoms will start getting thrown around. Measured moves, right, takes us back up to like 1600, which once again, I mean, clearing that 0.5 would be probably the key to that. So I'm not saying that that's out of the question by any means, but these are probably what everyone's gunning for at the moment. So just a run back into that range though is definitely something that if we get back in there at 12, losing 1260, return to the lows is definitely on the table. So let's take a look at some other things here, right? So Solana having a it's just chilling, and 15 what has it been up to now, 1750. What a move, right? So one of the biggest areas that we were looking for as we come down. Personally, I missed the bounce off the the range low here off the last quarter, but we were looking for 999 at the time, right? That was the area we were looking for the claim for the move higher. Natural target was going to be our point of control at 1360. Had a couple of pivots in in the way here, and took the monthly, that took this weekly pivot here, held it as support. Day open came, took another run to the upside. Originally, I left this on here just to kind of showcase that there was a gold pocket here. It's not a gold pocket now to the downside. This was from our, from this high to low, noting that it was coming in right at all the highs here. So I definitely anticipated that to be, met to just knock out all the shorters that were in this region. Anybody that was shorting here, if they didn't take profits, assuming that we were going straight down from there, they, saw their account blow up because this was a 40% drop. And if they didn't take any profits there, just to see it all come back and potentially even get stopped out and actually lose money on that trade. From here, this EQ of the range is something I'm, looking to see if we can hold. Right now, we're not doing a great job of that, right? So we're starting to lose it. You do have a nice little high that comes in just at about 1745 to turn this around. And, if you get a little push up out of ETH and Bitcoin, still a couple more percenters, I would imagine that Solana might get another little run up here. And, you do have a bunch of highs over here, or your last high in this region, which does come in at a quarterly pivot. So this is a quarterly average price that has not been met yet. It's 1893. You also got 1967 and then 2133. And those would be my next major areas to the upside if we get any more. Otherwise, starting a pullback, this potential. You got your 0.5 comes back down and essentially, meets you where we've been bouncing around this region. You've also got a gold pocket back down to like 1167. And then we've got a weekly level back down at actually 999 where we entered in the group. So something like that is one of those cases where, if we came all the way back to this region, same deal as anybody that's shorted here. If you were longing from this region, try not to get too greedy on this because it could very easily come right back to where you entered. And give up all the gains that you had, right? So by this time, I mean, this was a really big move, even just from the 999 entry. 75%, currently up 55, overall like 120%. That is, it's a really good win. So just don't get greedy if you were taking any kind of short-term positions, right? This is definitely a time where you probably want to, if you haven't already, met some of these targets along the way and started to scale out on that. You could potentially let a little bit more ride. This is not an area where I'd enter Solana, but if you're already in the position, let some ride potentially up to these regions. Otherwise, start probably looking for shorts here. Similar to how Magic said, I think a big short opportunity is coming for Solana as well. MATIC, for me, Magic and I kind of have a couple of different areas, that we're looking for. For me, I think that we're, probably topped out in a sense here, potentially. And then from here, looking down to these regions as we come into them, if we come into them, right? So this would be my fresh entries for MATIC. And this is more of a spot hold opportunity. And it's really doesn't come into play till about 59 cents, 53, and then all the way down to like 32. And this is just for a short-term bounce. Once again, potentially even just take it all the way back up to $1, which would be, a pretty substantial little bounce here. So if we get it. So right now we're living back within the range, getting a rejection. So I'm just looking to see if we get these. I'm not entering a short here per se, even though I think that there's definitely legs to it. But I think that there's potential to get stopped out pretty easily. So I'm looking more so for just fresh entries after we get to them, if we get to them. For Cardano, nice little pushback into the range, right? Where are we sitting at right now? Well, our quarterly pivot right here. So just below us, one area that I wanted to really see held and still do is 30 cents. Lose 30 cents and potentially we're heading back down pretty substantially, right? So even just on our gold pocket, idea here, 0.5 fibs. This was a really big run. So similar to a Solana. The pullbacks are pretty decent because to get back to your averages, or not averages, but to get back to these regions that the pullbacks tend to come back to, they're farther away the farther the price goes, right? So just back to that gold pocket, you're talking about a 20% pullback, which is essentially over 50% of this entire move. So it's a lot to give back up. So for me right now, holding on to 30, right where we're at, 30.9 is key in the short term. Otherwise, really pay attention to see if we lose this range low right at 30. It's basically right at 30 cents. So it's just below us. Doge. Probably gonna make an update in the group today for Doge. There was another one though. Oh yeah, XRP. Just looking at XRP on a sheer range idea here. XRP trades very well. It really does. I know that there's a lot of holders that just will not, which is fine. I mean, you shouldn't be trading your long and midterm holds anyway. So I mean, if you have a bag of whatever and you're looking to hold something for years, obviously that's not something you want to trade. But on your on that short term 1% of your portfolio trading idea here, I mean, XRP respects the levels very well. It doesn't tend to get too many huge moves, but when it does, I mean, they're really big. Otherwise, you get some really nice, just well-respected flows through the ranges. That we had this little shoot down here, which was looked at like a scam wick of some degree, but all we did was come back to our Q2 low. Got a bounce off that. If you look over here, it's one of those ideas where you came through and took out a lot of the lows here, and then we turned it right around. Got a point of control target right above us at 38 cents, and then an untapped quarterly pivot above that. Anymore, and then we'd be looking up to like 42. So it's just kind of cruising through the range here. For more upside for me, you can see how easily the support and resistance is coming in at this range high. Breaking 43 cents is kind of the gateway to any more substantial upside. Otherwise, from where we are to 42 is on the table, and then potentially just rotate back down. So that's what I'd be looking at for XRP.